James, today has seen the release of Rangers' annual accounts for 2023. How would you assess the club's financial position?
Yes, well, first of all, I think this is a really positive set of financial statements, with revenue once again being north of 80 million, which is a consolidation of the improvements that have been made in recent years across all four pillars. So that's something that, as a club, we should be really, really proud of. Ultimately, this has led to the second successive year of operating profit post-player trading. And again, that's something that's increasingly important within the football environment as we look at things such as UEFA club monitoring, UEFA licensing, and ensuring that we continue to evolve, we continue to work with new partners, continued investment around the facilities that allows us to drive those incremental revenues. And again, that's something that we've consolidated on in terms of the recent revenue growth. It's important to consolidate on that. It's equally important to look to move that forward as well as we move into the forthcoming cycle. So from a European and domestic revenue perspective, again, year on year, we've been relatively consistent with Europa League. So while we got into the Champions League, given the performance in the Champions League, we're relatively commensurate with the run to the Europa League final. So no material increase in relation to the Champions League. And again, it's something that we're looking to continue to evolve, continue to develop. Indeed, the performance in Europe and the performance recently, the other night as well, continues to enhance our standing in European football, which ultimately enhances the prize money as we move forward into forthcoming seasons. So something we should all be really focused on, and again, in recent years, all be really proud of. Looking at ticketing, there has been a small reduction year on year in regards to ticketing and hospitality, and that's primarily driven by the differential between the run to the Europa League final in 2022 versus the 2023 impact of the group stages of the Champions League. So small reduction there, but something that we're conscious of and something that is not structural. It is merely performance related and something that we're confident we can rectify moving forward. And the fourth pillar is player trading. And from a player trading perspective, again, we've had some successes in recent years. We've had Nathan Patterson in the prior year accounts. We've had Calvin Bassey and Joe Aribo going through this year accounts. And I think it's important to note that from a strategic perspective, the club are going to continue to focus on player trading, as that delivers us a net benefit, and ensuring that delivers us a net benefit into the P&L that allows us to operate sustainably within the regulatory environment.
Supporters may notice that the spend overall this year has been higher. Can you explain why that is?
So again, in relation to this year versus the prior year, we've had the Champions League, and as we qualified for the Champions League, there are associated contingencies and bonuses associated with that, and that ultimately drives an increase in the cost base. This is a flexible number. This is not something that is structural in terms of moving forward into the forthcoming cycle. As we're in the Europa League this year, we should see a reduction compared to prior years, and that's something that the club are very, very focused on, given the challenge of operating a club this size within the relatively small Scottish market of domestic revenues. So therefore, any European impact has a much larger impact on someone like a Rangers than perhaps someone down south.
Within the accounts, there's also reference to the investments that have been made over the last year. Can you touch on them, what benefits they've had, and then perhaps some of the investments going forward?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, first of all, to note that we do have a very supportive board here at Rangers. We're very fortunate in that regard, and the investors continue to support the executive team in terms of the investments that are required to be made, not only on the pitch, but also off the pitch. That has allowed us to deliver increased commercial revenue streams through the delivery of world-class venues such as Edmiston House, such as the museum, which has gone down fantastically well. And indeed, through where we're sitting today in terms of the Blue Sky Lounge, there are a number of investments that have been made across the estate, across the campus, and we will continue to make those investments in order to enhance the experience for our supporters. Equally, I think it's important to note that in order to ensure that we have those opportunities to drive commercial revenues, we have to make sure that the team on the park is a winning team. That is the history, that's the heritage of this club, and it's important that we continue to do all that we can to support the manager, to support the backroom staff and to support the first team on the park through ensuring that we have the best possible team on the pitch on a Saturday.
Within your answers there, you mentioned sustainability quite a number of times. What does that look like for the club going forward?
And that's a very good question, and it's one that I think a number of clubs have been looking at and have been looking to find the right answer to over the last few years. Increasingly, there's an increased regulatory environment with regards to UEFA licensing, UEFA club monitoring. And for us as a football club moving forward, it's important that we work within these parameters. I mentioned earlier on some of the challenges that we have in terms of the domestic competition versus the European competition and the revenues associated with those. So for us, it's about making sure that the level of investment in the first team squad, in the club, is commensurate with the level of revenue that we generate. That's why it's so important for us to continue to deliver that commercial revenue, to continue to deliver those new partners into the ecosystem, as the more that we can do that, the more that we can drive those revenue numbers higher and higher, ultimately the more that we can invest in the team on the park and therefore create that virtuous circle in terms of the player trading model. Therefore, financial sustainability to me, it's a path we're on, it's a path we'll continue to focus on, and it's something that I have every confidence that we'll be able to succeed against.